Hi, this is the Be Well with Michelle Greenwell podcast. Our heartwarming conversation is designed to lift you on your wellness journey. Grab your cup of tea and enjoy the podcast. Today, I have the privilege of introducing you to a beautiful person and performer. I'm laughing because the sunbeam is getting brighter as I'm going to say this. Ainsley Hamill is a recording artist, writer, and dancer who comes from Scotland, and her touring has taken her around the world, enjoying the stage with many other artists and her bandmates. For this podcast, I'm introducing you to the way she makes people feel with her music as we dive into a personal and inspiring story of Ainsley and her grandmother. And these are some words that people have said about Ainsley's music. Her voice is rich and warm, soaking its comforting balm deep. All the Hamill hallmarks of a soulful, acute vocal dexterity with real feel for a lyric. Ainsley's voice is muscular and undeniably flexible. It can be sultry or exuberant, but also percussive. It wraps you in its arms like a coat from the cold, and this release is like a shining pool of water, vivid, clear, and nothing short of brilliant. And this is in regards to Belle of the Ball. And that was Clive Pounceby, Folk Northwest. And then we have, I'm reminded of Nina Simone's haunting version of When I Was in My Prime. The effect is absolutely breathtaking. This is an exciting, ingenious, and highly original debut. And this is about Not Just Shipland from Folk London. Ainsley Hamill doesn't put a foot wrong on Belle of the Ball, her debut solo release, a super vocal, nuanced, and passionate. And that's Mark Higgins from Fate magazine. I hope I've said that correctly. Ainsley Hamill's sterling voice could compete with anyone at Celtic Connections, and that's Pat Byrne, the voice of Ireland. Hamill's refreshingly soulful voice, a mixture of Julie Fowlis and Heather Small, is very much to the fore. Alan Wilkinson of North Sky magazine. It's just so beautiful, the way that they've tried to capture your voice, Ainsley. It's so beautiful. I've got one more. So we've got, it goes a long way to explaining why she's considered one of the best of her generation, Belle of the Ball, and that was R&R magazine. So an artist moves people with their craft, and it's an inspiring and gifted way to live. And how has Ainsley developed the depth of her music and her way of living? So today we're going to be talking about the time Ainsley has spent with her grandmother and the role that her family has had in the choices and her way of living. And as we talk about grief and the process of moving through it, we expand to the connection of life that is created by our ability to love and to let go of our loved ones. As you listen today, we offer, please be gentle with yourself. Consider the gifts of knowing and growing that our loved ones offer with their connection, and make sure you have a cup of tea ready today. And I would love to introduce you now to Ainsley Hamill. Welcome, Ainsley.
Oh, wow, that was so nice. I'm like, listening to it, I'm like, who is that she's talking about? She sounds really good.
Aren't we our best critic, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's really nice to hear all those reviews, because obviously, like, for like gigs and things, you put a document together that says all those things. We don't read it, you know. Like, you put it together and then you forget about it forever. So that was just, I thought, a lovely introduction.
Yeah. Well, I just love the descriptive pieces and the depth of the quality, like what people really get from your voice and the way that you put your music together. And that's just so moving. And people often ask me, well, what's the fastest way to heal? And when I say, if somebody's a musician and they can play that piece of music, it's just so beautiful when it has depth and quality, and you can carry yourself through the different notes and bring yourself from a deep C down in your root, and you can pull yourself up to an A, and that's going to bring you out into intuitive thoughts and making new decisions. And it's just so beautiful. So I felt the depth of what you have within your music just really lends itself to the way we're going to be able to bring this conversation around.
Yeah. Oh no, I love that. Yeah, music's so important, and I know for myself, like I can very easily lose myself in it, writing a song or, sitting down at the piano, even playing random things. You all of a sudden think, oh God, I've been here for 2 hours and it seems like 10 minutes, So you're right, it's so important losing
Yeah.
yourself in it.
And you sit down too, sometimes, it's like, oh, I don't know if I really want to work on this today, or I'm having trouble getting that set of lyrics to jive the way I want. And like you said, you get into that groove of it and you get in there. And when you step up, that angst and that blockage and that feeling like you can't is completely gone. And you're transformed in what else you want to do next.
100%. It's funny you say that because obviously I'm just past the stage of writing new material for my new album, and I found it really hard this time round to write my own songs, and I don't know why. Like obviously I've just recorded it. I start mixing it tomorrow, um, but I found something that works for me. When I'm feeling very uninspired and thinking, "Ugh, I can't do this just now." Um, like that wee app. I think it's called like Guitar Tab. The one like where everybody refers to for like pop songs. Like if I open that and any song that comes to mind, I pull up the chords and I sit at the piano and I play through it. And it could be absolutely anything from any genre, like anything that takes my fancy. And I find if I do that for a wee bit, then I think, okay, right, cool. I've kind of got the will to carry on with the writing and doing what I actually need to do. Do you know? Whereas maybe years before, I would have said to myself, no, you're not allowed to do anything else until you do this thing. But it's counterintuitive, isn't it? Like sort of torturing yourself like that. Um, Literally, the last thing that I sat down and played was, the song from Willy Wonka. That if you want to view paradise, I
Yep.
think that is the most beautiful song, and the words just resonate with me. And I sat and played that for a wee bit, and all of a sudden I think, oh God, I feel so much better. It's got no relevance to my actual practice or what I would perform, but
Yep.
yeah, it doesn't have to, does it?
It doesn't have to. No, no, it's perfect. Okay, before we get going, because I know you and we could take off in our conversation. So, what tea did you choose to bring to the conversation today?
Well, before we started, I had told you I had a little bit of a, um, we'll call it a tea mare, um, because I love a Lady Grey, but the box was empty. I don't know what I was thinking, putting an empty box back in the cupboard, but instead I chose a turmeric with orange and star of anise. That took my fancy instead.
And star anise, that one is for awakening dreams.
Is that right?
Yes. And I know
Oh,
that specifically because on the Harmony coasters, which are sitting beside me, it's on one of the cards. And I was looking at it yesterday or the day before. That's why I know it, because otherwise they kind of come and go. But it's actually in the Harmony coasters. And yeah, and you look at the star, and that star, it has the openness within the petals, and it feels like this opening piece. And so if you start to think about awakening dreams and you think about what are the spaces that I haven't been looking at because I've been so driven by the linear road that I need to be on, like you playing Willy Wonka and diverging over into dreamland for a bit and then going, okay, now I'm going to fulfill my dream. I'm going to finish writing. What does that mean and how can you take it? So, yeah.
oh wow. Well, that's something that I've chosen that, just by accident. I like that.
And what I chose today, I wanted to share with the audience a little bit. I was thinking about our conversation is going to be around grief and around loss. And so, how could we be supported by some herbs? And so I looked at lavender, which lots of people will go to lavender, and chamomile. There's rose, valerian, lemon balm, motherwort, and hawthorn. All of those are herbs that could be supportive in a time of grief. So choosing a tea that's got one of those in it would be fine, or a couple. So our intention today is to transition ourselves into growth and inspiration because of the people that we've loved and because they've loved us. And so I wanted to choose a blend that would kind of bring that forward. So it's Island Vitality. So for the people listening on the podcast who can't see, I'm just going to hold the piece up. And you said star anise for what you had. I have starfish on here. So same shape. But the starfish don't have the openings and the spaces that the star anise has. And I wanted to read the inspiration that's on the front because all of the teas in the Cape Breton Tea Company have an intention on them. So they've already set people up for shifting and thinking about transition. This one says, be inspired by the power of nature that surrounds you. Rest and release into healing. So you and I were just talking about being able to go for a walk after the winter, and we actually now can get out and don't have to navigate ice and snow. So thinking about where do we connect in nature, and it might be in the house, but also it might be in a walk outside. It might be just standing out on the porch, but being able to remind yourself that because you're surrounded by nature, you have this opportunity to heal and to feel that peacefulness or rest that comes in. Yeah. So this blend has chamomile, hawthorn, and rose in it, and it has a host of other herbs plus green tea. Green tea is great because of the antioxidants to lift you up. But I wanted to talk about chamomile because a lot of people will choose chamomile to calm the body, something good before bed. It actually balances the yin and yang energies. So those two energies have to always be in a partnership, and you want to keep it balanced. And it helps to lift up the heart chakra. So that center knowing, heart-centered feeling that we're going to talk about today. And what goes with chamomile is a phrase that is, I release all fears and I help others in need. So as I was thinking about the conversation today, I was inspired by the idea that the grief of our experience with love moves us. And then how do we move forward? We get to move forward by looking to help others as we work with our own grief. So I'm just going to plant the seed of that as we go on today. And then I would say thank you for joining. It's going to be a raw and revealing opportunity to talk about grief and connection. I know that. But thank you so much for being here, Ainsley. I'm holding my tea glass up for those on the podcast. Please take a sip of tea. And I don't know if you can see the color in here. It's got a purpley kind of color to it. I'm sure yours is a yellow because you've got the turmeric in it.
It is. It's probably going to stain absolutely everything it touches.
That's okay. Yellow is sunshine. And we've had these billowing black clouds going by, and now we have blue sky, white clouds, and that sunbeam just keeps coming in. I just love it. All right.
Gorgeous. Well, this tea's actually very nice. I'm quite glad I chose this.
Oh, and for those people listening, and you'll be used to me with the podcasts I've done before and talking about herbs and tea, but once you set your intention, it changes the flavor. So where you might have pulled it out of the cupboard to just drink it, it would have one taste, but we really set up the way we wanted to weave through the conversation and the outcome we hope for people to have. And that does change the way the tea is, which is really cool.
Well, I love that. That's actually really nice. Gosh, I'm learning so much already. This is fab, Michelle.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so let's dive into you. And do you want to tell us a bit about your music and your career, just so the audience has a chance to get to know you a little bit, and then you can move from there to share a little bit about your grandmother and family and how they've played a role in the music.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm very much centred within Scottish traditional music. And my first practice is, or my main practice, I should say, is a vocalist, both in Scots Gaelic, well, not even both, Scots Gaelic, Scots, and my own self-penned songs, mostly in English, but some in Gaelic as well. And I've been doing it for a very long time, since I always say it was actually my piano teacher, Rosemary Wilson. She lives right up the back of Cardress at Fareham, and used to go around for my piano lessons. And I must have at that point have said, I want to play the piano and I want to sing. So she very much encouraged that, And at the summer concerts that were fabulous, she used to make the most amazing baking, and all the students had to play, what they'd been learning to all the parents. And I used to sing, and that's how I got my first. Well, technically that was my first gig, but then I got asked to do, the Cayleys in the village, and then from there in the surrounding towns, Helensburgh, Dumbarton, Clydebank, Glasgow, and it goes on and on and on. And I actually remember I actually really wanted to be a dancer. And my mum, I am a dancer now, right enough, with step dancing, but I thought it was going to be some sort of like prima ballerina type thing. And my mum said, listen, nobody's coming to the door to get you to dance, are they? They're coming to get you to sing, so does that not tell you something? And I remember thinking, oh, yeah, she's got a point. So then, it kind of carried on from there. And I did dancing from when I was very young as well. So that was with Alison Saunders from Cardress, the village that I'm from. And she very much influenced my performance style, and, and being very confident and not being afraid to stand up and perform, And then, from doing all these Cayleys, it was evident that I really wanted to do traditional music. And after getting a wee bit of Gaelic at school and being in the Gaelic choir, etc., I thought, this is for me. This is it. This is what I want to do. So I carried on and did the Scottish music course at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland in Glasgow. And there I met my bandmates, and Barlua was formed. And we did a lot of really wonderful, wonderful gigs from a very young age. And actually, when I look back, I think, oh God, we didn't appreciate that at all at the time, Like all these amazing festivals that I would absolutely love to do now, and I need to convince them, but I was doing them when I was like, I don't know, 17 or something, which is mad. And from there I went on to join Fourth Moon, the band, and then take my solo career forward, and doing lots and lots of projects along the way, collaborations with some folk that I really admire, like other singers and musicians that I think are fabulous, and I feel very lucky to work with them. And I mean, in terms of my family feeding into that, they have played a huge role in what I do. Because I think moving forward as a creative, you do need the support of those around you, because it's very taxing, particularly on your soul. When you think, and every creative has it, am I good enough? Can I do this? And that's the moments in which the closest people to you say, yeah, you can. So you've got to keep pushing on, And I'm very thankful that my family has been like that, because I know actually a lot of very creative people that their family isn't like that, so they were maybe pushed down another road, because they wanted them to have a more stable job, or they maybe thought they wouldn't be able to make it, or all these different aspects. But my dad, funnily enough, was not quite a creative, but he was a footballer. So, a kind of alternative career, and he very much said, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you'll do, type thing. And I've actually always been surrounded by very influential, strong-willed women, shall we say. And so whether that be Mrs. Wilson, the piano teacher, he very much influenced my musical style. And from my aunties that I'm very close to, my Aunt Lorraine, my Aunt Katrina, and my two grands. So then that only left my two grandpas and my Uncle Robert and my dad. So they were very much outnumbered by the women,
Yeah.
And so unfortunately I've lost both my grandpas and my uncle very young during COVID, which was terrible. So the women overpower the men even more so. Now it's just my dad and my husband Jack. So they're very much overpowered by the women. But it wasn't until I was making my last album, Not Just Shitland, it's all about equality and like feminism, I guess. And I was probably inspired to write about all these inspiring women because I was surrounded by them. And only at that point did I actually realise that. And my gran Ferguson that has just recently passed away, was a huge support to me throughout my life from being very young. Supporting me to go to like theatre groups and music lessons, and I literally went to like some sort of extracurricular activity every day of the week. And she would support some of them financially, take me to them, because my mum and dad were working full time, did a lot of things to facilitate me getting that extracurricular activity that's very much shaped me, and my other members in my family did that as well. But, like take me in from school, get me my dinner, saying, right, come on, let's go, drop me off. And also, in particular, having that attitude of don't let the wee things get in your way. You've got to very much push forward and sort of, why are you worrying when you can't do anything about it? You've got to keep pushing on. You've got really not got any other choice, do you? So you might as well make the best of it. That said has very much come from my gran, both my grans, but in particular my gran Ferguson. I'd say, are you worried too? And she'd say, me? Why would I be worried? Can't do anything about it. And that's something that I'm really trying to feel for myself at the moment, because I am a terrible worrier, So I'm trying to take that with me, that wee gem of not to worry, because worrying it does get in your way. It can absolutely eat you up, The only thing you can do is move forward. So, take the worry out of the equation. So I'd say that's my biggest takeaway, from my gran, and how it helps me navigate those difficult feelings that every creative has,
Yeah.
So that's it in a nutshell, I would say. Well, maybe not so much a nutshell, but that's kind of takes me up to the present time,
Yeah. Yeah. And something that the listeners might not realize, if you look at Chinese medicine, lung and large intestine are very closely related. They're part of the metal element. And the lung helps to process grief, guilt, and regret. So when you hold on to, it could be regret, right? I should have done that. But also worry can sit in there. as a part of some of the other pieces. And so when you start to think in those terms and you look at as a singer, how you need to use your lungs and how you need to be able to breathe in order to perform well, but also then to be able to express yourself with your lyrics, it becomes really profound that if you hold on to those things that you can't control, but you think you should worry about them, you hold on to those pieces, you can really affect the way that you will be successful. And it's an inadvertent kind of way. So I just wanted to bring that forward for listeners to think about, because how we think does make a difference, but also then too, that kind of advice, if you can't do anything about it, you know, and some people say, well, it's because I'm a Sagittarius and we just do that. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you might be, but you don't have to be. You know, you have a choice of what you want to do with that. So
Totally. I think that's actually really powerful because, I mean, for me, and I would encourage everybody I meet to sing, you know, because I find it so important. I even find, like, see, if I'm not even in the mood to sing, what I'm going to say as within inverted commas properly, you know, like performance-esque. And I think, oh God, I'll sing like you know, sing to myself or sing anything that comes to me, because people use this excuse of I can't sing or I'm tone deaf because somebody told them it 20 years ago, you know, and
I
it is
believe them.
just something. Well, exactly. And that really affects folks' confidence. When the reality of it is, unless you've actually got something wrong with your throat and you can't make sound, then, you know, everybody can sing, you know, and it's really important for your well-being. And, you know, even just like those breathing exercises, in for 4, hold for 4, out for whatever you can manage. Just so important. It immediately makes you feel better and calmer as well, you know. So for anybody listening, I guess, you know, I would just say, like, it doesn't matter if you don't think you can sing, just sing. You know? Interesting as well what you said about, like, regret. I'd say something, like, I'd say that was something that my gran would always say as well, you know, and she's not meaning it to be profound. She's saying it because she really means it, you know, like, no regrets. Like, if you thought it was right at the time, and I really believe this, if you believe in yourself that it's right at the time, then you should never have any regrets. And you've always got to remember that. I feel good, it felt right at the time, I felt I was doing the right thing. So don't hold on to that sentiment of you doing something wrong. You know, like, that's super important. A lot of people, like, as they get older. In fact, somebody said to me, not that long ago, "You're young," you know, and I was like, "Well, thanks very much." Somebody's not said that to me in a while, but, you know, like, when you get older, you'll look back and you'll have regrets. And in that moment, you know, I said to myself, I promise myself now that I will never have any regrets, because what a way to live your life, do you know? Like, looking back, I wish I'd done that. Don't, if you're thinking that right now, do the thing. Do you know?
Yeah.
Like, that feels mad. That feels mad to me. I get that you can find yourself in situations that you're thinking maybe that's not plausible, but, you know, if you've got the will, more than likely you're able to make it happen. So I think that's very important as well, you know, like, moving forward, that aspect of having no regrets. I think that's definitely a way I like to live my life.
So let's talk about you as a songwriter and how you pull experience into your storylines for writing.
Oh, well, I'd say I'm very much inspired by the people and places of Scotland. So like the folklore and the languages of Scotland. It's so rich and interesting. That it's very easy to draw inspiration, and sometimes, yeah, you could think maybe like, oh, that's too done, or that's whatever. But then to people maybe outside of the culture, or even Scottish people don't know every aspect of the tradition, because the country, albeit it's so small, from the culture up in the northeast of Scotland to the Western Isles, to the west of Scotland and the mainland where I come from, to the Northern Isles, to the borders, it's so vastly different. That nothing really is overdone because it's so vast. It's hard to kind of cover all aspects, So for me, like, I love to write about legend or sing about legend. Like on my new album, I've written a song, and I wrote it with two of my very good friends. They are called Noisemaker, fantastic company who create music and shows, and it's the legend of the Cailleach, like the old woman, and that she's this all-seeing figure, the sort of the mother of Scotland, the bringer of winter and the snow. The idea being you've got to be cruel to be kind. She kills everything and culls everything so it can regrow. Because if the culling didn't happen, as we all know, you get too much growth, everything becomes overgrown, and I guess that feeds straight into humankind. The overindulgence and everything that comes with that creates a terrible place, So that's basically one of my more recent inspirations, and things like the Echushke, the water horse. That's one of the old Gaelic songs that's on the album, about the water horse who can take on any form, and he marries a lady called Morag, and they have a child, and then Morag realises that he is in fact a water horse and runs for the hills, as you would. Apparently they were meant to be shapeshifters, which is kind of a bit freaky, scary, and a lot of the time these legends about the water in particular were made up to keep folk, particularly children, away from the water, and they end up just sticking and scaring the living daylights out of you. But there you go. So yeah, and then my last album, Not Just Shipland, the inspiration came from these amazing women in particular that came from Govan, that were very humble, but very humble beginnings, but achieved quite magnificent things. Like Belle Moore was an Olympic gold medalist, the first time women's teams were allowed to compete at the Olympics, and they won gold, for the swimming. And Lady Elder, the amazing, philanthropist, gave a lot of her money away to the people to create learning spaces, green spaces, and the list goes on and on and on. I could go on forever. But in a nutshell, I'm very much inspired by the people and places, and our rich culture and tradition within Scotland. It's very vast.
Wow. And, people thinking about when they say they can't sing, right? And then you think about people, if they say, well, I would never be able to write a song, but yet these stories that come into our heads of experiences, and like you said, creating these stories for children, either to give them that lesson or to help pull them to a different place. and then what's possible with the stories that really come into our heads. And it's beautiful that you can actually take them to a place where you can make them bigger by taking them out onto a stage and giving them an audience, and having an audience that's going to sing along and enjoy it as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like that's a big part of it for me. Like I'm obviously a bit of a like culture dork, for lack of a better word. Do you know? Like I love it, always have. You know, and again, very much inspired by my family and my gran Ferguson, taking me lots of places. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so my mum and dad would take me a lot of places, but obviously they're working. So my gran used to take me, just jump on the train to Oban, or go to Edinburgh for the day, or do something at the time when I thought, oh, I can't be bothered, But she said, come on, we take the wee pie at lunch with us. It's funny, I was doing a project in Edinburgh last week. It's this really nice stage show for babies with a lot of traditional music in it. Very niche, right? But it'll be lovely. And I was seeing everybody walking around in all the Edinburgh gear. And it was like the umbrellas and the hats and the jumpers and all that. And it was absolutely lashing down the rain. And it made me remember a day out with my gran, exactly that same thing, but basically tourists. And she brought out the bag, like those see-through ponchos,
Yep.
you know, the waterproof see-through ponchos. And it had like Scotland and like, the lion rampant and all that on them. And I was quite young, and I remember saying to her, I'm not putting that on. She was like, yeah, yeah. And we're going to go out and we're going to do what we said we would do. Couldn't even tell you where we were. But, she wanted to go around the shops and go and see different bits and bobs and, go to a historic part and, like everything that we would usually do. And, that sort of sentiment of get your blinking waterproof on and we're going to do exactly what we said we're going to do. That's very strong-willed and not letting anything get in the way of what you set out to
Mm-hmm.
do. And I made me laugh, like seeing everybody, cutting about in their waterproof ponchos. And here's me, cut to me, doing it like 30 years later or something, like, and it made me laugh. That felt quite, full circle. So I'm probably more like her than I actually realise,
Yep.
which I'm coming to, I'm slowly discovering that as well as time goes on. Which is actually quite nice, aspects of my personality that I would never have associated with her, when we're doing our normal thing, like spending time with each other just because it's normal. But in her absence, I think, oh, that's something she would do, which is quite nice.
And I'm thinking about, when you hang out with your peers, it would be very easy not to go because you didn't have the right gear. But
Yeah.
when you hang out with people of different generations, they've done so many things and they don't care anymore. They don't care if it's see-through and it has something plastered all over it. They don't care. They want to go and do what the experience is, and that's where they focus. And when you're younger, how am I going to appear? Have I prepared myself the correct way? What will people think? And older people don't think that way. And I think the role that grandparents play when they don't care, what does that mean for us as we're younger, thinking that everybody's looking at us and critiquing us for what we're going to do?
It's interesting to say that because I still feel that's something that I'm working through. I'm not at that stage where I really don't care. Do you know what I mean? Like, I look at my gran, right? And she didn't care, right? She is, was so she died when she was 87, right? So you need to keep that in your mind, right? She had a red sports car, right? Very, very trendy. Just got like a new sofa, did her house up, got the curtains changed, she wanted a fresh new vibe, but she would do it like twice a year. She would change things over, want cool, trendy, and that is not for appearances, that's for her. Because she wants a change of scenery, because she wants a fast, cool wee car, because she likes how it feels when she drives it around. She likes looking out the window, looking at it, like all those things are for her, right? And I'm really trying to channel that for myself, right? Because I think you're going to be your most authentic self when you're doing all that for yourself. And, as a creative, that's what's going to make you individual, And that's what's going to be, maybe you don't realise it, but, your sort of je ne sais quoi, that's something that nobody else can be, Because I think within what I do, I see a lot of people maybe trying to be something and fit into a box. And I don't want to say copying, I don't feel there's copying, but taking a lot of inspiration from others when actually you're going to be fabulous if you're totally yourself, And I'm not quite there yet. I'm going to be really honest about that. I care what people think, and I really wish I didn't. I really wish I didn't. But I'm kind of getting there. It's a kind of quite a freeing feeling to think, I don't care what you think. I like it. So there you go. And I bet you there'll be somebody else out there that likes it. So if you don't, then you're better away.
Yep.
And whereas maybe when, not genuinely, not that long ago, I would have thought, no, don't go. Like me, like my music, like the things that I create. Because it makes you feel better, doesn't it? It makes you feel good. When folk say, you're great, or I really like what you do, But I think the reality, obviously, is you can't please everybody. And isn't it better just to be your authentic self and let those people go and let the people in that do really like it? So I feel I'm actually really going through that just now. I find myself saying, what would they like? And I think, actually, what would I like? So that's something I've kind of realised. Well, I've known it for a long time, obviously, but something I've realised very recently that I would like to change about myself, And it's something that really came to the fore when my gran was very, very unwell, because me and my mum were with her the whole time. She had a terrible, terrible stroke and she couldn't talk. She was totally with it though. And we could communicate through kind of, some facial expressions, body movements, and that is when you know somebody, and you can communicate in that way, Still, honestly, and it's something I'll hold on to as well. It's just her good faith and will to be kind and good to other people, even when she was in that situation. It was all about making us laugh, the nurses laugh, wee funny faces, and giving it, looking me up and down, what have you got on the day type thing, giving it all that, that is something along with trying not to care what people think, but doing it with like the ultimate kindness,
Mm-hmm.
like be good and kind, because that's what I'll remember her for, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I would honestly pride myself on being a nice person. I hope people do think that of me, because I always try and be not just nice but kind to people,
Mm-hmm.
because actually I do believe whatever you put out will come back to you. It's all very circular. If you do kind, nice things for people, then hopefully you'll get that back, and hopefully it makes your surroundings and the world that we exist in, to be even just a teeny bit better, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't even remember your original question now.
No, but you said something interesting. And in that case, right, because you've had a stroke and you can't speak, it would be very easy to be really frustrated and angry and
Yeah,
and then sad and cry. Like you could go through a gamut of emotions, which you may go through and which she may have done in private. But what's really interesting that you said was, because she spent all of her time reaching out to make sure you were all okay, the memory that you have is not of somebody who had a stroke. Oh, my poor grandmother, all of these things happened. She was so sad. You don't have that. You have a grandmother that turned it around and went, how many ways are we going to make this nurse laugh? Who's also having a hard day? And how am I going
yeah,
to continue to shine the light on my granddaughter so that she'll continue to thrive rather than being pulled down into the position I'm in? It's a really interesting way to look at it, because I hadn't thought about how do we play the illness role. And there's a lot of people who have chronic pain, who have issues they've had for a long time that may never change because they broke their arm and it doesn't always work the way they want. But they have the choice of, oh, this is my bad arm. Oh, this is the way I have to do it now. Or I'm going to push that arm as hard as I can because it should be as good as my other arm. But you also have that choice of, I think it's grace. The grace of accepting I'm in this position. Now, how do I make the best of it? But also, how do I enlighten the people around me? And we started our conversation today about that, about our ability to reach out. So even if we are grieving, how do we reach out to help someone else? Because that's how we get through. And your grandmother was exhibiting that at one of her most vulnerable moments, which is really,
yeah.
really interesting.
It is interesting, and don't get me wrong. Like, it's if you would ask her, uh, being very close. Like, I feel like I can ask her anything. Which is a relationship I hope people close to me feel that they have with me.
Mhm.
And I I did say to her, I thought she looked dead sad one day, after all the hoo ha and the looking up and down and the, you know, telling me jokes and blah blah blah, and her laugh, and she could still really laugh, like her laugh really came out. And I had said to her, um, "Are you sad?" Because she looked sad, and my mum was saying, "What are you doing? Stop! Don't you know?" And she said, she nodded her head,
Mhm.
and so it was that thing of, yeah, sheltering me to a point, but if I asked a difficult question, she wasn't going to lie to me either,
Right.
you know, and that's okay, you know, because I did want to know how she was feeling, and I
Mhm.
did want her to be honest with me. And it just sets in my mind every other time I've asked her a difficult question. that yeah, she was telling the truth. Because she could have lied to me in the moment
Yep.
and said, not talked it, but showed me with her actions, I'm fine,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It's okay. Don't worry about me. I'll be good. Yeah.
But she didn't. She told me the truth. And that's very important for me, is to be honest and truthful, um, while never hurting anybody's feelings or up, purposefully upsetting people or using it as a tool to be nasty, you know. But having the grace to be really honest is quite a difficult thing as well, because we all do it. We all say, "Yeah, I'm fine," or "Yeah, I'm good," and actually you're not. And I think we get used to saying it too often. And I'm not saying turn into some sort of hippie lunatic when someone says, "How you doing?" And you say, "Well, actually, I'm extremely depressed." And like obviously there's a time and a place. But if you feel in a situation where it's trusting and you feel comfortable or compelled enough to tell the truth, you probably should, because that could give other people the confidence to say, "I actually don't feel very good either," or "this thing's happened to me," and you could end up really helping each other. And you would never have known if somebody wasn't risky and said the thing that they were actually really feeling. Do you know? So that's a huge learning curve for me. I would say I'm generally quite good at being honest and saying how I feel and maybe having difficult conversations. But again, I could probably still be better. So I think that's a good thing. That's something I've definitely taken from her.
Yeah.
And something that's helping me get through my grief as well. You know, I'll openly say to the people that I trust, like, "I feel like I'm struggling today. I'm not doing very well," or "I feel very sad. Do you feel sad?" Or when do you feel sad? And talk about it and talk about how it makes you feel rather than not. But I think
Exactly.
also, like, yeah, I think it's done. It's got to be done with compassion as well, because rather than selfishly, because you could dump a lot of stuff onto somebody else, and I think very quickly you would be able to tell if they didn't want to hear it, and then obviously you can pull back, because other people, I guess, are going through different things and can only deal with certain snippets at a time, or can't deal with it at all, not ready to talk about it. But, I guess you've got to navigate that. But I'm meaning more with people that you really trust and you feel that you can talk to. I think it's always good to talk about how you're feeling. And also to talk about how you're feeling when you feel it's positive feelings as well. I think a lot of the time we only talk about our feelings when we feel really sad or anxious or stressed. And very rarely do we actually say, "I'm just feeling dead happy today, and these are the reasons why."
Right?
It's true, isn't it?
It is. Yep.
And
Yep.
it's really important, because then it sets it in your mind, like, "I'm happy when I do X, Y, and Z, and I should do more of that."
Yep. Or for me, when I have that day when everything flowed, and that is everything I went to touch, everything just kept coming in like I was on the right road. And then you have other days where it's like nothing worked the way you wanted it to work. You had an idea where you were heading, you you took a U-turn in a completely different direction, but you kept hitting the roadblocks. And I always think about when you come back to that thought of that day just felt so uplifting, and it just everything just went forward, and I accomplished things without really much effort. And I always think back to that's possible. So the day that I'm not, and I'm hitting the wall and things are tugging, why? And then to reflect on the fact that you know what it feels like when it does flow beautifully. So what is it going to take to get you to that space?
100%. Like, it's so important. And like a lot of people talk about a improved mood if you journal, right? And I was like, yeah, right. Like, I'm going to sit down at the end of the day when I'm absolutely done in before making my dinner, or get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and write down how I feel. Yeah, right. Like, that's going to happen, do you know? And actually, it was, that Apple Fitness Plus on the iPhone. It's like all the exercise classes and that, and I really like it. Like, there's lots of good running classes and things you can join, right? But there's hundreds of things like it, app wise, for exercise. But it's something. It was a new feature. Log how you're feeling today, and it takes like 10 seconds. You go boop 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 boop, or you can go into more detail. I never do. I just go, right, done, right?
Yep.
And it shows up. I don't know how they do it. The algorithms are mad. It shows up at a time of day where I feel like it's manageable for me. Do you know, I'm not stressed. So they must have worked that out with an algorithm or something. I don't know, but I've noticed that I'm at my happiest when I've done some really good exercise. Like, I feel like I've really, like, particularly running. I love to run. And like that sort of stride, that wide open stride, it makes me feel good. So I've realised from logging how I feel that's the pattern, that's one of the main things that makes me feel really happy. And then obviously from literally the beginning of time, somebody could tell you that, right?
Yeah.
If you exercise, you're going to feel better. And you're like, oh, is that right? Thanks very much for sharing that with me. Do you know what I mean? But actually, when you discover it yourself, you're like, God damn it, they were bloody right. It does make me feel good. Do you know? So it's like that self-discovery and doing it for yourself is the thing, isn't it? That I've really found. So yeah, I mean, I've turned into one of those folk that I think, shut up. No, I don't want to write down how I feel. And no, I don't want to go on the treadmill right now. Do you know? But that's something that's actually really helped me. Like, identifying, like what we were saying, like identifying and talking about like what makes you happy. Or if you don't want to talk about it, write it down. But that's only through the act of writing stuff down or talking about stuff when you're not trying to find it, and then eventually you'll find the pattern. Because I get it can like feel overwhelming, especially when you're feeling rubbish. Like, like grieving is just the most awful thing. It truly is the most awful thing. Like that feeling, and we know, like, for anybody that's went through grief, it presents differently every single time. And I think that's frightening, because when I found out that my gran, that we were only going one way, she wasn't going to get better, and she knew it herself, I was actually frightened about what was going to come. Frightened to grieve because it's so awful.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, I don't want to scare anybody because everybody experiences everything differently, But when it's happening, it's never quite as bad as you think it's going to be. Just like everything else,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You just work your way through it and you navigate and you adapt. Because as a human being, you might not think you're very resilient, me included, but actually it's incredible the way that you can just mold yourself into an environment or a new situation. Um, so obviously I don't want to scare anybody that is going to be grieving or that maybe hasn't experienced it before. You get through it, you do it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just one of those like, kind of journeys that presents itself differently for everyone and in different ways each time you experience it. So I think concentrating on the good things and the things that make you like truly happy and present in the now are very very important. But even if you're not grieving, try and identify the things that make you feel really really good.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like, well, obviously, right? Obviously, but it's incredible the amount of folk, myself included, until not that long ago, I didn't really know what to do that would make me feel good in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, like people are so busy these days, like working, taking their family places, doing whatever they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Forget like when they actually stop, like what do I do with myself? Like it could be like reading a book, watch a telly program, going out for a walk. What makes you feel really good in yourself, and know, yeah, it's really important.
And I've had a couple of thoughts while you were talking, and one is I like to ask myself, what kind of day do I want? So
Mm.
I could check in with my emotions, but again, if you go back to Chinese medicine, if the body's out of balance, you'll be experiencing an emotion based on which system is having the most challenge. And so if you
Mm.
are feeling something in particular and you repeat that every day, you feel the same every morning, then you know that system is really working hard and it needs something from you. So the part I like to do in the morning is, how do I want to feel today? And maybe it's a day where I'm not writing songs like you are, but I might be writing blog posts or something like that.
Mm.
And I want to feel creative, or I want to feel introspective. And another day
Mm.
might be I just want to feel ease and flow in my day. And another day
Mm.
might be I need strength because I'll be going to do some tasks that I haven't done for a while or they're new to me. And that's what I'm looking for. But when I set up what is the quality of the kind of day I want to have, then I can put that into action. And that changes you from how do I feel at the moment? And maybe you do get stuck because you didn't go exercise and you kind of sit in it and you see the pattern. But it's really nice to know you could make a choice to something different. The pattern that I like to do to bring that into balance, and I learned this when I had the kids, they were really young, and I had to make breakfast and lunch. And I hated getting out of bed in the morning and having the responsibility of two children that, number one, didn't want to get up. Number two, they didn't want to eat breakfast. And then when I made
Right.
lunch, but I don't want that for lunch, and so it was like such a chore. So I would lie in bed, and it's called Cook's Hookups. And so you just cross one ankle over the other and you cross your hands over, or you can cross them across the chest, and thinking about the quality of the kind of day you want to have, and then just breathe.
Right.
And then after you've
Oh
done that
man.
for a little bit, or in my case, I hit the snooze button on the alarm clock and just kind of drifted off. And then when the alarm would go again, then I'd put my fingertips together in front of the belly button and the feet just go side by side. And then I could lie there and I actually walked myself through what I needed to do. And so before I
Mm.
got out of bed, I'd have already gone into the fridge, there was some ham and cheese, and there is bread on the counter, and I'll pull out the mayonnaise, whatever it happens to be, and walked myself through that whole piece. So by the time I got out of bed, it was like I just went into that pattern of I knew exactly what I was going to do. But then I could go in and say, "Good morning, how are you?" and hear the, "Please don't wake me up," you know, and it's like, it's okay, I'm going down to make breakfast, and and off I would go. And that tool I carried with me for a long time because it was such an arduous thing to have to do every morning, but also that quality of how could I change my day? Anyway, so I was thinking of that as you were describing those pieces and recording, because you can record, but how are you going to move forward from that space?
Mhm.
And maybe you do go to the gym and you move forward in that way. But you might want to know where you want to go for the rest of the day based on what it is you want to be doing.
Totally. Like, absolutely. I think that is so important. Like, what a nice thing as well to foresee your day, before you even get out your bed. And then I think as well, like, it's important. Like, I do this all the time. And in fact, I do it the night before. And I really shouldn't do it. It's something that I feel I need to let go of. I make a plan in my head. And then when things don't go to plan, it really stresses me out. Because I think, I've tightly scheduled this whole bloody day. And now it's totally fecked up. Do you know what I mean? Like, and actually, that's life.
And I like to think of it as leaving the space for intuition to find the fastest way. So my list of 25 items satisfies my need to get things done. But if my day is, I want to experience my day as creative or something like that, then all the pieces that are going to lend to the creativity will have gifts arrive for them in the order that they need to happen. And I've learned to let go of the list, because when I go back to the list, it'll be really interesting how many pieces got done, but not in the order that I thought it was going to go or the way, because these gifts arrive. And I know for musicians, songwriting, dancers, movement, you think the choreography is going to go this way, and then all of a sudden you get this idea, and then poof, it merges into something else, and it's so much better. But it is better because you had the space to let it go and for the opportunity for the other pieces to come to us. And I think that sometimes we really try to grip on tight, hold on to that piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you're always going to create better when you give yourself time and space. Like, it's, and obviously there's going to be deadlines, like, or else nothing would happen in the world, like,
Yeah.
so, you've got to work to the deadline. But if you're able to give yourself the time and space to think, if anything, you're going to be happy with the end result if you've thought about it more,
Mm-hmm.
And like, for instance, like, I'm looking over this song that I had written. It's called "The Angels Share," and it'll be on the new album. Most people, I don't know, maybe most people don't know what the Angels Share is. It's, like when the whiskey, freshly distilled whiskey, is put into the barrels. Um, it evaporates when it's maturing. So you're going to have less left in the barrel by the time it's ready to go. And those fumes that evaporate up into the air are called the Angel's Share. And I guess there was that hit movie that was made about it. It's quite a good film. It's called The Angel's Share. And, but, I wrote a song based around that. And we chopped it up a wee bit. It was quite irregular, which I like. I sometimes like a through composed number. But my producer said, rein it in a bit. So I was like, okay. So we ended up chopping bits out of it and made it more regular. And it kind of changed the sentiment. Not the sentiment, but change some of the lines, maybe to not make full sense. So I had to go back and kind of work on it again, and things weren't coming to me. And I remember sitting on the train going to Edinburgh from Helensburgh, and it's a long train ride, and I'm sitting trying to absolutely hammer out these words, right? I'm thinking, oh, this is doing my absolute head in, right? And I think to myself, what are you going to do right now? You can't think anything good, right? You can't think anything good. So I closed my computer and I looked out the window, right? And I thought, chill out, for God's sake. So I looked out the window and it was absolutely beautiful, right? Just like the scenery. I was actually looking at water. I'm from the west of Scotland, but the train takes you all the way from west to east, so Helensburgh to Edinburgh. And kind of around, I don't really know what it is, it's maybe just past Bathgate or something. There's this kind of loch with really thin trees, and it's so beautiful. And the sun was really shining, and it looked so bright and clear. And I was like, "Whoa, that is beautiful!" And the line came to me. It's going to be brighter soon. Because I saw how bright it was outside. Because I was killing myself because I'd said bright twice. And I thought, oh my God, I can't say bright twice. That's so stupid and clumsy, right? It's going to be bright. And then the next line, I was like, why can't it just be, it's going to be brighter soon? It was so simple. But looking out the window got me there. Just taking a wee break got me there. Which is mad. And it was like the space of like 10 minutes or something. I wasn't even doing it for long.
Yeah.
And so that's it. That's exactly what we're saying, like in practice, isn't it? Like, give yourself a blinking minute. Because we don't really just try and hammer through things. And like, listen, I like to get stuff done. I don't like having all the open tabs and loads of unfinished things. Like, that bothers me. I like to get things wrapped up, put out, to feel like I'm achieving, moving forward, But even if you're like that, I feel like you've got to give yourself a wee bit of time, or else you just don't get the ideas. You don't get the good final ideas. So again, like, that's something, like going back to my gran, that I find I'm kind of taken away from this horrible situation. Like, just give yourself time. She would do something like, she was a very good cook. That was her occupation. She was a cook for the whiskey industry, funnily enough. And like, my whole family worked in the whiskey industry. And like, she would do something, or say she'd be cooking at home, or doing a task, or doing something that she probably actually really did need to do, But I'll always remember, if she didn't feel like it, or she feels she needed to stop, she would. She was never bad to herself, which is something that I'm really trying to do. But I don't feel like it. I actually don't need to do it right now. Why am I absolutely hammering myself trying to get it done? Just take a wee beat and just chill out, So.
Yeah. It's only your deadline. It's only the timeline you set. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's going to be cases when the deadline is hard. You're going to miss the boat. You don't get the application in, if you don't finish the song. And sometimes you need to make the difficult decisions of, oh, I'm not sure about that, but I'll just need to go with it. That's important too, I guess.
Yeah.
Getting that good balance is definitely important.
And there was one other piece you said before we went off on this tangent. was also about the experience of, after the stroke and as she was deteriorating and came to the place of passing. And I think a lot, like you said, a lot of people, that's a fearful place. It's a hard place to get to. Yet if you have it in the mind or in the process of, how do I want to say this, of being in the experience of it and the beauty of being able to be present with that person and the gift of you're the one that's there. And in therapeutic touch, they call it hand to heart, which is holding onto the left hand of the person. And depending on how well you know them, you could put your other hand on the shoulder, you could put the other hand over their heart. And just really making that connection with them that you are there and you're connected, and making that opportunity to transition so much easier. And that's one of the gifts of therapeutic touch that I've really enjoyed, is always having a tool in my toolbox to support in some way. And maybe it might be supporting that person who is ill, but it might also be supporting other family members. And so being able to offer therapeutic touch sessions have always been something too that I can quickly move into a place of empowerment rather than sitting in a place of despair where I feel like I can't participate in some way, because I know I can participate. And when I do participate, I have this opportunity to change space and time. And so I just wanted to bring that forward as you were talking about it, because you said it ended up being more beautiful than you thought it could be.
Yeah. And I think, like, not to be mistaken, like, it was, for me, extremely painful. Like, probably the most painful feelings I've ever had, you know. But me, my mum and my gran were together 24/7 at the end, you know. We didn't want to leave her because she would never have left us. But it also wasn't just that, it was that feeling of we have to be together, you know. So, and actually we did, like at the very end, we were holding on. And I think that's something that people are frightened of. In the past, you know, I was with both my grandpas when they passed away. And again, that was very, very painful because we were very close. But I wasn't holding on to them. And I remember thinking I wanted to. And it wasn't the right thing to do in the moment. But I feel with my gran, Ferguson, we're so close that we do touch. You know, like, and I wouldn't say I'm an overly touchy-feely person, but we do cuddle, or, you know, like I would take each other's arm. So touch is part of our, you know, communication with each other. Like, that's just what we did, you know. And we were holding on. And that's probably was helpful for my gran, you know, to know that we were with her and we're all doing it together. But like, it helped me, you know, which I was so surprised at, you know. And it's funny, isn't it? Because a lot of people are frightened to touch, as I had been in the past, even though we're really close. You know, and I think when you know the person very well and touch has been part of your whole life together, that why shouldn't you? You know, like, because that connection's so strong. And albeit it was hard, like, I'm glad that it was like that. And I'm glad that we were with her. And I would like to think that I would have somebody like that with me in that situation, you know. So yeah, it's all very full circle, and things. I think that feeds again very clearly into doing what you think's right in the moment. So I had learned from past experiences. I wish I'd touched them or held their hand or what. No, you don't even need to hold hands. You can literally put your hand on their arm or whatever you think's right in the minute. And the fact that I did what I thought was right in the moment, I don't regret doing it. So touch is a very powerful thing.
Very, very powerful. Yeah.
And isn't it something that sticks with me is that it's like that's a lasting memory, how that felt, because we don't just remember things by what somebody said or how they look. A lot of what we remember is by touch, touch and feel. So, and then the moment is maybe more ingrained because it was sort of multi-sensory. And like actually feeling the warmth of somebody's hand is like it is very like empowering as well. I'm very grateful to have had that connection and for her to have let me do that as well. So I guess the takeaway is realise the importance of touch, I guess. And not don't be afraid of it. And then I guess we get into all these things of you need to make sure folk want to be touched, etc. Because that's a whole other avenue, isn't it? That I'm specifically talking about the folk that are closest to you.
Yeah.
I'm not random folk you meet in the street saying, "Can I cuddle you?" Because you're probably going to get a bit of a strange reaction. I mean, if that's what you want to do, fair play to you, but that's not specifically what I'm talking about. And it's. I think, see, especially being Scottish as well, right? This probably exists in a lot of other cultures.
Yep.
But people say it maybe about the UK in general. Not very touchy-feely folk and that stiff upper lip type vibe, showing emotion. So it's kind of inbuilt, that don't be too soppy or don't express yourself that way too much. Which I've got an essence of, because I told you, like, right from the start, I'm not overly touchy-feely or, but I think it is important. I think it's really important to have that presence with the people that you're closest to and that you trust.
I know with my grandmother, if I came into the room, and I live a long way, or lived a long way from where she was, and so I didn't get to visit very often, but I would always rub her feet. And so the last couple of visits, she would just say, "It's time now," and she'd just put her feet up on the ottoman, and she'd be like, "Here they are." But it gave me, again, it was an empowerment piece because it gave me something to do while we were talking. And you just kept rubbing, and you could just see the whole calmness come in. And she loved to have her feet and her hands rubbed. But not many people will, sit down and pick up some feet. Lots of people don't want to rub feet. And that's, my feet first system foot rub. It's just so empowering. It reconnects all the systems. And even if you didn't know that, just being able to hold the feet makes such a difference because the whole systems get rebooted. But it was also lovely because you're right. I know what her feet felt like. I know how stiff every joint was, but I also knew that expression on her as everything calmed, and then she took a deeper breath, and and we didn't have to say anything. We just be in each other's presence.
Which is so lovely, like such a lovely thing to share. Funnily enough, as well, like when my grandma was very unwell, we would do like re-beautifying sessions. She's probably thinking, I've had enough, but if anything, it was making me feel better because I thought it was nice for her. She's probably thinking, bloody hell, let me go to sleep, but she's trying to please me type thing. But we did wee pedicures and wee like feet massages and, you know, different things like that, you know, because that's actually something that we used to do together. We would always go and get our feet done. And when I say getting our feet done, I'm talking about like a spa pedicure, but like nothing fancy, you know, like just one of the wee places that you would go into, you know, in Glasgow. Like you don't even need an appointment. Like you just go in and have, you know, like the spa bit to put your feet in
into the bath.
Take all the rocks, and, you know, and that's something that we used to do all the time together. You know, so actually that's a good point as well. So it's doing things that are maybe related with touch, but you're maybe not even necessarily having to do it. It's like the shared experience of doing something like that together. It's also very nice. You know, but in the end, I was trying to do that for her. You know, to be reminiscent of all the times that we did go and, you know, get our feet done. She really loved like a wee day out, do you know? And it's something that I try and remind myself to do. Have a wee day out, take a break, go and get your feet done.
Yeah.
Go and get your nails done. Go and do something you wanted to do for ages. Like, do something for yourself, you know? And I think especially when you're grieving, we talk about, like, in inverted commas, also that really angry phase. You feel like the world's against you. Why has this happened? You want somebody to blame. And that's natural. It's natural feeling angry in a situation like that. But then if you do something for yourself, and I would say obviously with great importance, like to obviously not be selfish or hurt anybody else and those choices. I mean something light, like taking yourself out for the day or reading the book that you always wanted to read, or that alleviates your anger like instantaneously. You know, because again, like in like the upset of everything, it's dead easy to get lost in it all. You know, and sometimes it's hard to think of something when you're upset. What can I do right now to make me feel better? But then, like, you know, it could be simple, hey, or it could be big. And you know, people say, oh, but what you also I found as well, when I'm having a bit of a rubbish time, and I noticed it just there, when my gran passed away, I went in to the hairdressers and I just said, cut it really short, just cut it right, just cut it off. And I loved that the hairdresser was like, cool, didn't even question it, let's cut it off. And I felt amazing, you know, and it's like that, it's very freeing. And people might say to that, oh, that's rash, or do. How's it rash? Your hair grows back. Do you know what I mean? As long as you're not making any lasting damage on folk, or no, in fact, not even lasting damage. Don't be damaging people in your choices, you know. But things like, you want to get your hair cut, you want to shave your hair off, do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't let anybody tell you that your choices are wrong, especially when you're feeling the way you're feeling, because you've got to work through it in your own way, you know. And then see if you do cut your hair short and you don't like it in 2 weeks' time. One, it's going to be a little bit longer than it was when it was cut 2 weeks earlier, and then you'll know for the future, I won't get my hair cut that short again.
Exactly. Yep. And that's okay.
But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. We weaved through a lot of pieces, and I appreciated that you brought in nature. So if I go back to the on the package, be inspired by the power of nature that surrounds you, rest and release into healing. And you even brought that in for songwriting, looking out the window and enjoying nature. We've talked about lots of ways that people can help themselves or be empowered as they're going through the process. Is there anything else that comes to your mind? Maybe it's with singing, or maybe there's a particular song you have. Anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners that is a way for them maybe to pass through the feelings they've got and move them forward?
You know, I think it's just important to feel what you're feeling. I know that sounds a bit like, can feel a bit demeaning, somebody saying that to you when you're feeling rubbish. But I would say that, like today, I felt rubbish. I felt real rubbish. But, in particular, like to do with my gran, because things are moving on and the house has been sold and it's very difficult. You've got to sit in the hard feelings, because then you appreciate the good feelings that will eventually come.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the fact that folk, I've said this since the beginning of time, hey, but obviously your grief isn't linear. You're going to have some serious ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't be afraid of the downs, because it's a learning curve. And, the phrase is true, albeit it's a little harsh, like what doesn't kill you does make you stronger in the end.
Yeah.
Like it sounds twee and cliche, but it's really true. Like it's such a learning curve, so lean into the difficult feelings, and it just makes you a more, well, I would like to think, compassionate and kind, and have more understanding of yourself, which in turn is going to just make you more unique and more yourself. And that is the most intriguing part of us all being different. We can all learn good things from each other, as well as discovering things about yourself.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting too, you think of the learning curve, and most people think of the learning curve, you're going up. They're thinking of the upside because they're learning something new, not the bottom, and the bottom where you finally go, I'm going to do it differently. But we all have to have that place where we get to that, I'm going to do it differently, before you can go up the other side. So the learning curve really is the transition down to up, rather than just up. Which a lot of us would just really rather do the up. So, yeah, I just was thinking of that as you were saying it, and I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, that is important though, isn't it? Because how do you enjoy the good times and take the most out of all the good times when you haven't had the bad times, to balance it all out? It's that yin and yang thing.
It is. Yep.
About you've got to take the good with the bad. I feel like I'm full of like cliches. I feel I could be like one of those plaques that hang on somebody's conservatory wall. Be kind and you'll have a good life, But like genuinely though, it is very, very true. It's all about balance, treating yourself, working hard, taking it easy,
Mm-hmm.
trying to achieve. It's a mixture of it, and you've got to accept the ups and the downs, I guess.
And so one of the things I'll bring in as we bring this conversation to a close is in my bioenergetic wellness toolbox, and I'll say it with that language because we have an organization here in Canada called Can Be Well. and it's canbewell.org. And it's a bioenergetic wellness way of looking at things. And that's how the whole podcast has been set up, is for us to move in transition and find a way forward. And all the pieces we talked about today brought us through that. But one of the things that we can do is called ESRs, which is emotional stress release. It comes from Touch for Health. And you just put your fingertips really lightly on your forehead. And the connection of the energy in your fingertips connects to these little points across the forehead, which go right into emotion. And then we have this opportunity to change how things are going and release. So if you have a really tough day where you go, this is a tough day today, and put the fingertips on the forehead, you don't have to think anything, just sit. And the back brain sends some blood to the front brain, and the body can start to process the emotions out and release things. But the other thing you can do is, as we've done today, is we've weaved all these beautiful memories into the stories and our realizations and how much growth has happened as a result of the process of having lost your grandmother. And so holding the fingertips and just letting the ideas of where am I now and what has made me stronger, or what insights do I now have, can come from those fingertips. So I share that with the audience so that you're always empowered. You're not going to be without some way to make that movement forward. There is always a way. And these tools, they just go in the toolbox, put them in your pocket, know that they're there. And then someday you'll be sitting there and you go, I remember that podcast. And she just talked about putting fingertips on the forehead, but it's empowering. And it can be very helpful too for somebody who maybe is sick, and maybe you're caring for them, and maybe they are distraught today, and you see that on their face. And to be able to go to their forehead and say, I'm just going to put my fingertips here and take a couple deep breaths. And you can see that whole transition come through. And you can go down and hold the feet as well. You can hold between the fourth toe on the foot and the pinky toe on the foot part, but you go right in between on the bones, and your thumb is on the back side, so it'd be the bottom of the foot. But you hold those points on both feet, and that will also just completely calm the whole system. So if you have somebody that's ill and you can't get to the head because they've got all kinds of apparatus around them, or other people, and you just go to the bottom and just hold their feet there, you can really calm the way that they're feeling. It doesn't work on your own feet, so you would have to put your feet up and say, please, somebody come hold my feet. But it does give you that option, at least, that's something that you can do. So,
that's lovely.
Yeah. Ainsley, thank you so much for being so open and conversing and sharing. And I think that our audience has lots of ideas, lots of ways to reflect. And that's what I was hoping for with this podcast and with season 4, really bringing people into a transformation. You can listen to podcasts, but I really want people to feel when they finish, they've gone somewhere and there's something either new, resolved, or possibilities now are right there to be able to take them. And your insights were so beautiful. So I think we started the road of that for season 4. So thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you very much for having me. Like, I feel, if anything, I hope folk don't feel it's been too self-indulgent, but actually even talking to you has helped me, through something I'm finding difficult, so even maybe sharing my experiences, I hope some folk can take solace in that, so I appreciate you giving me the time.
Yeah. And we talked about at the beginning too, the fact that your grandmother's house did just sell, and that the furniture is going to go with the house and what that means. And we set up before we started the podcast for that opportunity to work through those emotions. And so I'm saying this for the audience. One, I'm again, your vulnerability of putting you out there. But the second part is for the audience to realize when you're listening to these podcasts, if you have something you're trying to work through, know that before you start the podcast and let the podcast pull you through. And you can go back and listen to the different kinds of tools that we shared and the ideas and a little bit about the songs and the music, and then be able to see what does that mean for you and how could you add that to your toolbox. And hopefully that means that people really start to feel empowered and knowing that they can do more and they can make a difference. So, all right, Ainsley, how can people find you? I know they're going to want to look your music up.
Well, I'm on all the platforms. I mean, first of all, I would love if folk listened to me on, Spotify, gave me a wee follow. I'm also on Instagram. Everything's at Ainsley Hamill or at Ainsley Hamill Singer. So dead easy to find. And I would be over the moon if folk were to listen to my music and my new album in particular that will be out in the late summer.
And we'll have you back because you and I are going to talk about music more in depth, and you'll have processed the music and the choices, the way you wanted to put the album together, and you and I are going to talk about that. So for people listening, that's coming down the pipe, and we will have all your resources listed in the description, so people will be able to go there. But I really do invite you to go listen to the music and become familiar with the songs and the way that you like to bring things together, so that when we do talk about your new CD, people can really be ignited by the power that's going to be within the CD.
Yeah.
I say CD, but within the music. CD is the way I, learn to listen, but everybody else would be streaming it.
Yeah, I know the world of streaming.
So with that, we're going to close the end of this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And if some of the ideas about the herbs in the tea are appealing to you, then please go and check out the tea at the Cape Breton Tea Company .ca. And there's lots of information there too that you can grow with, and I invite you to do that. And otherwise, be well, take care, and thank you, Ainsley. Thank you for listening to Be Well with Dr. Michelle Greenwell. There are a couple of resources I want to just point out. When you go to the website greenwellcenter.com, you'll have a pop-up window. That pop-up gives you the top 8 easy stress releasers that you can use every day. That's something you can put beside your computer, the bathroom mirror, beside the bedside table. A great resource. Also, my YouTube channel. It is full of playlists with all kinds of different ways that you can activate energy and bring vitality into your day. You can find that when you go to YouTube at Michelle Greenwell. And last, if you're a Linktree person, Linktree, linktr.ee/Greenwell Center. That has all my resources in one spot. Those are for intricate little things that you can't get everywhere. And it's a wonderful way for me to be able to share all the different aspects of the kind of work I do. So thank you for listening. Be sure to drink that tea. And if you want to have the tea blend that was shared in the podcast today, then be sure to check out capebretontea.ca. Have a wonderful day.